Here are 30 uses of must that will expand your advanced English grammar knowledge. We're going to look at using must in these ways: for certainty, likelihood, concluding, obligation, necessity, persuading, and some special phrases too. Firstly, must for certainty. Must is used to show certainty in the present. For example, in this situation, look at all these cars on the road. There must be a problem on the road. None of the cars are moving. Here I have certainty that there is a problem. But I can also use must for the past to show certainty. Look at the key difference here. They must have crashed. Here we have must have, followed by the past participle. When we want to talk about certainty in the past, we need to use must have, followed by the past participle of the verb we're describing. Here we have certainty because we can see what's happened with the car. It must have crashed. But for negative certainty, or questions about certainty, must is more unusual. We'd prefer to do this instead. Now look at the car this time. Not they mustn't have crashed, but they can't have crashed. The car still looks like new. Can't have. Here we have certainty, but it's in the negative form. It's the opposite. So instead of saying mustn't have, we usually prefer to say can't have for certainty, which is presented in a negative way. Now, obligation. Must is used to state rules that are required to be followed. Have you ever been to a library? What rules do you need to follow in a library? Well, normally there are rules about being quiet because libraries are quiet spaces. So the person who runs the library might say, people must enter the library quietly. This is required. It's an obligation. Mustn't is used for requirements containing a negative. People mustn't make noise in the library. What about when speaking about a future obligation? Well, here you have some choices. You could use must. Tomorrow I must go to the library. Maybe you have a book that you have to return to the library by tomorrow or you'll get a fine. So here is an obligation. The library have told you you must go. And it's tomorrow. And that's okay. But we also have other choices. We could say, tomorrow I have got to go to the library. Or, tomorrow I'll have to go to the library. These are both ways of expressing obligation in the future. Will have to literally means it will become necessary at this future time. When speaking about an obligation that someone has given to you, have to is often preferred to must. So here you're reporting the rule to someone else. The librarian has given you the rule, you must be quiet. Now you're reporting it to your friend. I have to be quiet in the library. We wouldn't normally say, I must be quiet in the library. You can, but it doesn't convey this sense that someone has told you and you are reporting a rule that's been given to you. And when you're reporting a rule that's been given to you, have to is better. Now for necessity. If something isn't a rule, but is still needed, must can also be used in the same way. Look at these two people about to go on a journey. What is necessary, not what's a rule, but what is generally thought to be necessary for a journey like this? Well, you could say you must take a map with you or you will get lost. And in the negative, you mustn't take a heavy bag or you will get tired. So must and mustn't can be used for necessity in the same way as obligation. However, we can also stretch the meaning slightly to what should or should not be done. And must can also be used here. It can be used to mention what should or should not be done. The other walkers mustn't expect me to be fast. This is my first time walking up a steep hill. So this is what the other walkers should do. We could have said the other walkers shouldn't expect me to be fast. That would be okay. But to make this stronger, use must instead of should here. Now for past necessity, this is what's better to do. We prefer had to instead of must. We wouldn't say we must take good walking shoes with us on our journey yesterday. That would be wrong. Instead, we need to say we had to take good walking shoes with us on the journey yesterday. And what about if we want to speak about past necessity, but in a negative way? Well, we have this slightly unusual structure that enables you to do that. Don't say mustn't, do this instead. We had to not take a heavy bag with us. Had to not. That conveys the meaning of necessity when it's in the past in a negative way. Now there's lots more to learn about grammar, which is contained in my course called Perfect English Grammar, which has lessons, exercises, speaking practice and progress tests. Over 40 hours of content. And if you join this course, you will get my feedback on your writing for free. You can send me a sample of your writing and I'll tell you how you can improve your grammar further based upon what you've written. Sometimes, if we give advice which is refused, we might reply, if you must. Look at the dialogue below about this person doing a parachute jump. He says to you, I'm going to do a parachute jump. You reply, isn't that dangerous? They reply, yes, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now, here you've given the advice, it's been refused, and you kind of disapprove of what they're doing. So you say, okay, if you must. Be aware, this might make you sound annoyed at the other person. So there's a way of softening it a little bit. You want to communicate that you don't approve, but you still want to say something about the situation. When we say if you must followed by advice, it means I don't approve, or if you have no other choice, then do this. So let's carry on. If you must do a parachute jump, phone your mother first. She will want to know you are doing it. So here, if you must, could represent the fact that you disapprove, but you're giving advice anyway. But it can also have a different meaning. It can mean if you have no other choice but to do the parachute jump. Maybe you're in a plane and the only way to get out of the plane is to do a parachute jump. Then if you must would work for that. Here you don't sound annoyed. You're just saying, well, if it really is necessary and you have no other choice, then do this. Now we're looking at must for likelihood, and this is similar to must for certainty. Must is used to show high likelihood in the present like this. Here's someone on the walk. They're thinking about where to go. Perhaps they went the wrong way and then the following happens. I called, but there was no answer. He must be too far away to hear me. Here, you're not certain, because maybe the person is just choosing not to respond, but you think there's a high likelihood that he must be too far away to hear me, and here must indicates the high likelihood. Also in the past, they haven't arrived home yet. I expected them an hour ago. They must have got lost. You're not completely sure they got lost, but you think there's a high likelihood. Must could also be used for different forms of encouragement. Firstly, to show personal intention. Here, you're encouraging yourself. Look at the basketball team. One of them says, I must do my best in the game. By saying I must, they're not really putting a rule on themselves. They're just encouraging themselves. They're motivating themselves. This is their intention. Now, must can also be used to motivate others. Don't give up. We must try to win the game. There's not really a rule here. Nothing's going to go seriously wrong if it doesn't happen, but you're trying to encourage the others to do it. When you urge someone to do something but it isn't a rule, you can still use must for this. Look at this situation here. Here's a coffee shop in your town, and you tell someone, when you arrive at my town, you must visit the coffee shop. It sells incredible cakes. So must here is more positive. You're encouraging someone to do something. You're urging them. You're saying this is really, really good to do. Now, must for giving conclusions. You can make conclusions in the present with must based upon evidence like this. Look at the girl. What's your conclusion? Your first thought is probably the girl is eating an ice cream and she is smiling. The conclusion is it must be nice. So it must be nice is the conclusion based on the evidence we had before. Also with the past using must have. The child has just finished eating an ice cream and she is smiling. It must have been nice because she's just finished it. It's in the past. And there are some other uses of must that are good to know and use as well. Firstly, with reported speech. Now, with reported speech, we often think of backshifting time. Present becomes past becomes past perfect. Not with must, though. Must stays the same. So let's imagine that a nurse gives you some instructions and now you're telling someone else what those instructions were. The nurse says that I must take the medicine. This is in the present. The nurse says, what do we use with must? It stays must. But what about if we change says to said? The nurse said that I must take the medicine. We still use must, not must have taken. We wouldn't use the past form of must that we use in other situations, such as with certainty. We wouldn't use must have. Not the nurse said that I must have taken the medicine. No, it stays must. You can start a question with must you for this reason. It can be used to express dissatisfaction with someone's actions. Look at the lady with the fingers in her ears. She's not happy because someone is playing loud music. And she says to them, must you play music so loud? So this expresses dissatisfaction with their actions. Also to emphasize the importance of getting a particular message across. Now here we can use the following structure. It must be followed by a reporting verb. For example here, have you ever been to an airport and they give you instructions about what will happen if you're not on the plane in time? They'll probably tell you the plane will leave even if you are late to board. But to emphasize the importance of getting the message across, they will add this. It must be stated that the plane will leave even if you are late to board. And you could use other appropriate reporting verbs. It must be noted. It must be emphasized that the plane will leave even if you are late to board. Must is sometimes used to indicate something coming in the future that cannot be stopped. We sometimes call this destiny. Do you like birthdays? When you get older, some people don't. And an older person might say this, I don't enjoy my birthday, but I guess it must come. And must come is indicating something in the future that cannot be stopped. Birthdays come whether we like it or not. It must come. To emphasize the fact that you have a great need to talk about something, start a sentence with, I must say. I must say, you both look fabulous today. Here it's because you've got something that's really made an impression on you and you want to get it out. You want to communicate to the world something that you think is important. So you add I must say to emphasize that this really needs to be said because it's important. After hearing something, to show surprise at what you hear or to make an exclamation, you can use you must be. For example, you must be joking. You must be out of your mind. You must be tricking me. Perhaps someone says something and you don't believe it's true. It's been snowing all day where I live. You must be joking. It's the middle of summer. You must be out of your mind. You must be tricking me. You live in a hot country. And now for some other uses of must that are not in the strict use of must as a modal, but are useful to know. And here's an expression that is sometimes used in British English. Needs must. This means I have to do this to meet my basic living needs. Look at this poor lady working so hard. She's working later than she should. She doesn't want to. She says this: I don't want to work overtime, but needs must. In other words, I have to work more to get money to pay for something important. We could use a must as a noun, and this describes something that is completely necessary to do or have. If you've ever been to Portugal and to Lisbon, you might know that there is a famous building on top of a hill nearby in a town called Sintra. And climbing the hill at Sintra is a must when you go on holiday to Lisbon. It's completely necessary to do. And must have can also be a noun, but this only describes what's necessary to have, not necessarily what's necessary to do. If you like phones, you might say this: the latest phone is a must have. It has the most powerful camera ever.